Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Sonia Cato Howard. I am with eWomen. I am partnering with Kimmy McNeese, and we meet every first and third Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, where we do a conference call with ladies. Also, I am here every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., and Kimmy is on every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Tonight, the topic is when someone wrongs you. It's hard to believe that today that we're still dealing with racial discrimination. And shout out to my daughter, Bianca, because she told me that she thought I should talk about this topic. I had an incident that recently happened. In the Black Lives Matter movement, it's important that we stand up for our rights. A lot of black men have died and have lost their lives unnecessarily. But there is a subtle racial discrimination that's going on. It's all around us. Everywhere we look, there are opportunities that we miss out on when we're taken advantage of, when things are taken away from us. And it's all because we're black. And that some white person that's in a position of power who hate our skin color and does whatever they want. And no one cares, and no one comes to our rescue. And yes, we should fight for what we believe in. But I am saying that we can handle it a different way. Like everyone else, I've had my share of racial discrimination throughout my life. I mean, let's face it. If you're black, at some point you're going to go through this at some point in your life. But I have had to handle each incident differently. I recently had an incident last month, and I wanted to share with you how I handle it differently. Back in November, my girls purchased 2 purebred dogs for me for my birthday. The breeder is County Line Pets in Wrightsville, Georgia. You may have seen my prior post about the injustice that happened to me. About a week later, after I got my puppies, one of them died. And I am 99% sure that it was because of parvo after doing my research. So I called the Wrightsville courthouse, which whenever you're suing someone, you have to actually go to the county they live in. And so I called the small claims court, and I paid $110 to file a case. I gathered all of my letters from the vet, from the pet hospital where my puppy died, the research that I got off of Parvo, everything that I could find, all of my corresponding texts that I had with the breeder, and then I filed off my case. About 2 months later, I got a court date, and I drove down 2.5 hours back to Wrightsville, Georgia, where we got the puppies, to go to court. When I pulled up, I noticed all the Confederate flags that were flying outside the courthouse. And I thought to myself, this is not good. When I got inside, we waited on the judge, and the breeder asked the scribers for the judge by name. So now I'm thinking, he knows the judge? I might be in trouble. And how many times has he been sued? I thought to myself. And then that's when I remembered I had only seen one black person since when I was driving through the town, and that guy was riding a bicycle, and that what caught my attention. Well, we proceeded with the court, and I went through all 12 exhibits of my case. And I presented all of my arguments. Now, and I was very professional. The defendant stated this, but this is what actually happened. The defendant said this, but this is what happened for real. I went through everything professionally. And I really expected it to be like Judge Judy, where they ask you a lot of questions to clarify your arguments, and then you have to give more information, but she didn't. The judge didn't ask me a single thing. And then the breeder presented her case. And then she lied. She presented a document and said that she had given me this document and that I signed it. And when I looked at the document, I said, no, I've never seen this document before. In fact, Your Honor, I have the document that I signed. And I gave it to the judge. So I was feeling pretty confident after she lied that I had won the case and that I would get my $860 back. $600 for the puppy and $260 was for costs that I had spent on the vet. But the judge never asked us a single question. And then she said she needed 30 days to review all of the evidence, and then she would let us know. And that was it. So I hit the road 2.5 hours and drove back to Atlanta. But I was very hopeful that I had presented solid arguments that the breeder had sold me a sick puppy. Well, last week I got a letter in the mail from the judge stating that they agreed with the breeder and that I had lost. So therefore, I got nothing for the money that I spent, the hours that I spent driving, the hours I spent gathering evidence to prove that this white breeder had sold me a sick puppy. I felt cheated and defeated, and there was no way that this breeder had presented a sound case, and yet they won. So, how was I going to handle this racial injustice? I'll tell you how. But first I have to explain some of the new information that I got a couple of weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago, I decided to downsize to a tiny house to minimize my costs. I didn't buy the house yet. I just said I'm going to downsize. And yes, that's another whole story that I'm sure I'll talk about later. I also had been listening to podcasts by The Minimalist on how to get rid of everything that is not currently bringing you value. Also, the minimalists live by not worrying or wasting time over worrying about things that don't help you. And I love this concept because it was consistent with what Christians believe and what scriptures say about not worrying. Because the more you worry, it doesn't add any hours to your life, so why do it? So since I had started this new movement in my life of not spending money on things, getting rid of things, and not worrying about things, I decided to cut my losses and move forward. That means do nothing. You see, if I decided to continue to fight this in a higher court, it would cost me more money, time, and aggravation, aka worrying. And this would be counterproductive and not doing what I said I wanted to do, which was live as a minimalist. Yes, I was wronged by someone, but in the scope of my new lifestyle, I decided to let it go. In another case where I was wrong and racially discriminated against, sorry, it was an emergency broadcast came on the thing. In another case where I was wrong and racially discriminated against in the Navy, I have been fighting that for the last 4 years because it's not actually costing me money right now, and it will benefit my kids in the future. I know that these examples do not compare to people losing their lives. But what I am saying is weigh it out. If you are wrong, if you are racially discriminated against, think it through. Play it all the way out, what it's going to look like if you do this, if you do that. And then weigh the cost to you. Of course, pray about it and see what God has to say about it. And what is the wisest thing that you should do? How should you approach this in your particular situation? and then make the best decision for you. Black people have not overcome yet. We still have a long way to go. May God bless the families who lost their lives unnecessarily, and may God bring justice to them. And may we use wisdom in prayer during any future racial discrimination situations until this is no longer an issue. Thanks for listening.